Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Oh, wait, no, that's the song behind us. This is the intro in front of us. My name is William Millingworth. I'm the AI artist. This is William Millingworth, one of your two co-hosts, joined by my buddy, my friend, my pal, Joshua Swartz, your other co-host of the High Tech Podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I was doing great until you started singing our song. You know, it felt no, I was just it didn't have the bass drop. You know, the AI bass drop really hits. Yeah, I think that's what hits home.
Yeah.
You know, that's really what really gets it there.
That's why we open with it, right? Because it's catchy. We feel the vibe.
That, and we really didn't have anything better. We just kind of created it because we didn't really have a custom song.
We had a song, but we had purchased it and all that junk.
Yeah,
so.
well, and then there was a song before that we found on, what was that, a Lexus commercial? That somebody, it was like some car commercial. Somebody was like, "Wait, isn't that the intro to your song?" We were like, "Yeah, because it's free."
It's free
use music, free tunes. That's what they call it these days.
Free
tunes. The good old.
I don't know how this works, guys.
Yeah, I don't know what is the term for that. Free music. It's
open source.
Nope. Incorrect.
Common
code.
Something. Common.
Oh
maybe
my
one
gosh!
of us should look it up.
This is really gonna bother me. This is a real thing that I should know.
When music is in the public something or other.
Public domain. That's the thing. Oh man, I have to sit down after that. That was a lot of effort. That was kind of hard.
Really tired you out there, right?
You take it from here. I'm gonna sit down.
Really set you back. Folks, this is episode 201. Wow, thank you for joining us. We're gonna get into some heady stuff today. Josh and I are always thinking systems, processes, AI. You know, how to do things better. We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we get to the meat, I do want to remind you, as always, please follow us, like us, subscribe, share, comment, tweet, ping, knock on the door, ring the bell,
nope,
whatever
don't
it is.
Knock on the door. I disagree with that suggestion.
Josh lives at.
Nope, don't do that. I've been thinking up something that I haven't gotten to tell you yet, and so I'd like to present it here.
Are we buying property?
No, we're not buying property. Although I've seen some sweet 13-room houses that we could, just a group of us, go in on.
Yeah, sure. That's gonna be real easy.
It would be awesome. I'm just saying, a 13-room mansion game basement. That's all I'm saying. That's just tossing out ideas. There's a lot of room for whiskey and board games. Anyway, sorry, that was
records.
Not my.
We have to have records.
That was not my idea. Well, yeah, so we could have that too. So anyway, no, my other idea was, we should start reverse psychology subscribing in the beginning. So instead of telling people to unsubscribe, I think our new tactic
leave us alone.
Should be,
never touch us.
Don't like us. Don't follow us. Stay away. You know what I mean?
The podcast doesn't like you.
I think that should be the topic. We are not the high-tech podcast. We are the low-tech podcast. Just everything's the opposite.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
I'm on board.
Okay.
I think this is the way
we
do it.
Well, in that case, we don't have any socials. Tell them,
There's
we have no socials.
They are not at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. They're not that.
They're definitely not whatever you just said the first time.
Don't judge me. Don't judge me. You know why. Don't judge me. So, all those podcasts that we aren't, all that social media that we aren't
we are not social. We hate it.
Our email is not the inbox at High Tech Podcast. In fact, it's outbox at lowtechpod.us. Like that.
Nailed it. We should just start handing out friends' emails as the High Tech Podcast. Here's Chris Crossdale's email address as the High Tech Podcast email address.
That's savage.
Yeah, my intrusive thoughts are winning today. I think that's probably one of the problems. I don't know.
Maybe we're too relaxed by the end of this evening. But last but not least, do not go to our website. It doesn't even exist. It's not hightechpod.us. You shouldn't go there. Do not bother yourselves. It's really not worth your time. There are no episode pages on it. You can't find anything. You cannot share it to your friends. Dude, I leaned in.
Yeah,
you started it.
I know, but it's not hitting the way I was hoping. I feel like
through it.
I know it's okay. It's fine. This was my fault.
Cool.
I created.
Try it again next week.
I created this. I created this problem.
You created a monster.
Yes.
A modern day Jekyll and Hyde. That's a song I'm thinking of. Anyways, that's it. as always, find us on the socials, all those things. Reach out. We love you.
Podcast
You're
over.
the best.
Episode over. That's it.
And that's a wrap. Joshua, before we get to the meat of things,
Yeah.
who in your life calls you Joshua besides me right now? Does anybody call you Joshua?
That's an interesting question.
Your mom when she's angry? Your dad?
No, I don't know.
No?
My
No one
parents
calls you Joshua?
called me JR when they were mad because my middle name is Ross.
Uh-oh.
So they would call me JR when I was mad, or when they were mad at me, and you are sure guessing the kids probably loved that. But no, I'm trying to think if anybody calls me Joshua. I don't know that they do, actually. Now that I'm thinking about this, I don't know that I really have anybody. Like, you don't actively call me Joshua. You just kind of...
In fact, right now
mean?
is probably the second time I've ever done it.
Yes. Yeah. I've been tracking. There's a board behind my monitors. That's... I'm just joking.
And 0 days since incident.
The other was February 2nd, 2015. No, I'm just joking.
Wow. It's been a bad day.
It was a weird day. I don't know that anybody calls me Joshua, to be honest. I've always just gone by Josh. To the point that I sign things Josh. Like, I only found out a couple of years ago that I actually probably shouldn't be doing that. When you're signing things, you should sign your full name. I've always just signed Josh.
Was that probably when you were trying to get your mortgage or something? Like, I have to write Joshua Swartz.
No, it's literally only come up in the last, 2 years that somebody was, saw that I was doing Josh, and they were like, you probably shouldn't do that. Like, I've signed my mortgage as Josh, not Joshua. You know?
It's
not
fine.
that it really matters. Nobody can really read my signature. It's kind of bad.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, I don't know. Like, for context, folks, there used to be a coworker of mine who was also named Joshua. And we both had very similar position titles. And we didn't look similar other than we were white guys. But the
and had the same name.
But we made a rule that he was Joshua and I was Josh. That was the way we were distinguished. So yeah, because it was just easy. My name was Josh. This is bothering me now that I can't think of any human being that references me as Joshua. That's a weird.
I ask because we both have a name that is either William Joshua or Josh Will, right?
Yeah,
and
we do.
I regularly get asked when people meet me, like, "Oh, are you Will or Bill?" Right? That's what they ask, and I'm like,
that's a regular thing.
No, not Bill. I say Will or William. I don't mind either. But like, you are a Josh. If you're not Swartz, you're a Josh.
Yeah, I mean, most people call me Swartz. I mean, at this point, like friends-wise and stuff. Yeah, I don't.
Right.
And it's
I get yelled at when I call you Josh because
Yeah.
our friends are like, "Who's Josh?"
Yeah, no, it's an odd thing. Yeah, when people ask me what I prefer, because I do get that too. People will be like, "Is it Joshua or Josh?" I say Josh because that's what I'm used to being called. You know, and it feels like probably, you know what? I'm gonna get a little deeper. You know. Just for a second. Not really. I'm building up for nothing right now. My obsession with efficiency probably is like a deep-seated, like it takes too long to say Joshua.
Wow.
Stop adding that other syllable on there. Like when there's no point, you know?
It's Josh.
Yes, exactly. Just like that. I like that. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's fun. Do people split Will and William with you? I've never really thought about that. I just always called you Will because out of my own preference for shorter names. I don't know if I ever even asked you. I think you were just introduced to me as Will, so I just started calling you Will. You know, that was the fateful day.
I don't mind. I have people call me Will and people call me William. I don't know a difference, and because I always say that I don't mind.
Yeah.
I write my name William everywhere because there's too many I's and L's in my first and last name. So I never write Will Illingworth. That just 0 times out of 0 do I write Will Illingworth.
William Illingworth is easier to say than Will Illingworth.
Right. There are a couple of different restaurants that think my last name is Lingworth because of whatever reason. They just drop it because
I've also been sending them information telling them that, but it's,
sure. You're the saboteur. You're the saboteur, huh?
It's been an alternate campaign I've been running for a long time. Just messing with you. How ridiculous! Sorry, we were totally off topic. We'll get back to topic in a second. How ridiculous would that be? Like long-standing prank. Since college, I've been calling restaurants.
Yeah, if you get an order for a Will Illingworth, you're gonna have to make that a Mr. Lingworth. Just switch it up.
He's very important. He gets very angry when you don't do it that way. You know what I mean? Like that would be.
Yeah.
Kind of sad I never thought of that. Be a fun prank. Anyway, side note. Great times.
Nonetheless.
What are we talking about this week?
Yeah. It's that kind of stuff just comes up because of work and people. I figured for Sam, if she's still listening, a little.
Yeah, because she doesn't know what to call me, so this is good. She got a breakdown.
Sam, by the way, your husband's name is.
Yeah.
This week we're going to talk about systematic decision making, and frankly, this episode took a couple tumbles before it got to us in this current form. Originally, this was going to be a rehash of the untools.co platform. Back on episode 72, I believe, we talked about Untools. It's still cool. It's still an interesting tool and an interesting platform. They promote and propose different ways to work through systematic decision-making, feedback, communication. Really cool. But since episode 72, which if you're keeping count, is over 130 episodes ago, especially with the extra episodes.
So it was like yesterday? We did 70 episodes in 1 week, and then we were like, we'll do another 130. That's
today.
That's the vibe.
Since then, they've started to charge money, and you know what? Mazel tov. We respect that.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourselves, make money.
Yeah,
but back when we had done it in episode 72, everything was free. There was only maybe 6 or 7 models available, and so it was easier to see things through. But as we like to do things here at the podcast, we like to keep them free. Free is generally our aesthetic, though not always. We decided not to stay in the untools lane. We're going to focus then on generally like what it's like to make decisions, how it can be more helpful to make systematic decisions, how it's better to work with teams instead of like, I was in a meeting today where we honestly spent an hour talking about something, and at the end of it, I was like, so, what are we going to do? There was no decision made as a result of the meeting.
Yeah.
If we approach things like that differently, we can make a change. So we're going to get to a tool and series of tools that can help us accomplish this. But before we dig into the actual bits and pieces, I think Josh has a story lined up for us.
Well, yeah,
according to our outline.
Thoughts on this, because it's ironic. This was Will's idea, but I am very passionate about this topic.
Very passionate.
For a lot of different reasons. Mainly because I'm convinced the 11th ring of hell is being in a meeting where no decisions have been made. You know what I mean?
No decisions made after one whole hour.
It's like a conference room with bad coffee and you've just sat through 12 slides. Or no, sorry. There's a worse one. There's bad coffee and you're at a brainstorming session. Which are
rough.
Are like swear
That's
words
rough.
to me. I was talking about this the other day with a coworker, right? Where, I don't think decision making has to be that hard, and it's maybe because I've taken for granted the idea of systems that help you make decisions in meetings for a long time because of my training in project management and experience over the years. I've kind of just assumed that this is obvious to people, that it's not that hard to make decisions in meetings. But we were joking that he was in a meeting where they were doing an Eisenhower Matrix, which we'll explain here in a second because it's one of our systems we'll talk about. But it breaks down if you don't use it properly. It's a system for prioritizing things and making decisions. But the person leaned over and they were like, okay, I've thought this far, but what do we do next? They had no plan for what happened at the end of the meeting to make decisions and priority decisions. They were trying to figure out projects for, ironically, at a time they shouldn't have been figuring out projects for the summer. But they were doing this, and I see this so often at different levels of teams, right? We're far enough removed, I can say these things. I was briefly on a team over the summer that I would say maybe struggled with decisions. Things would get held up because everybody had to give their opinion, or it was never clear what the priority was, or all of those things. And I've seen that happen at senior leadership level. I've seen that happen at different team levels. And I was just talking with a friend at work last week of going, it doesn't have to be that hard. And I literally in 5 minutes explained what our senior leaders, a Kanban system could look like with somebody managing it that would easily reduce all of this constant back and forth about what priorities are. And then we laughed and we kind of, left our lunchroom because none of us had control over whether anybody adopted that or not. And so like there's this thing about like there are systems for making decisions that actually work really well, and a lot of them come from either like leadership frameworks or project management frameworks. And while some of them don't work, they have to be used in certain scenarios. It's not like if you just use this system everything will magically come into place. You actually have to follow through on the system. Right. Side note, just drawing a graphic with post-it notes at a meeting does not mean you did a great job at making decisions. You actually have to follow up on what you use that framework for. But there are systems for this, and I think I don't know if we talk much about this, but ironically, there's a moment for me this year that clicked of why this is such a pain point for me. Have you ever done the oh my gosh, what's it called? It's another one of those like leadership tests, which is not my favorite thing in the world, but this one was not too bad.
DISC?
It was not DISC. I don't like DISC. It was oh my gosh, what was it? I'm like blanking here for a second on what this was called.
Oh, man. There's too many of them.
Now I need to Google this real quick.
You do your Googling. I've done insights discovery. There's the like working types or working genius. There's of course the Myers-Briggs. There's so many different ones that help in a theory would help you understand yourself better and help you learn how you lead or work through team meetings and stuff like that. One of the things though that I definitely think comes up with this kind of conversation.
Strengths Finder.
Strengths Finder. There you go.
Sorry,
yeah.
I got it now.
You're good.
I don't know if you wouldn't continue. I don't have to cut you off, but I know.
No, the point that I would finish there is just like one of the things that happens with this, if you don't have a decision-making process, like we're suggesting frameworks, processes, etc., at the very least, go into a meeting with a goal.
Yeah.
Like the meeting I came out of today, it's like we sat down to it to like share information. It was like I had learned something. I wanted everyone else to learn it. And at one point, several others in the meeting asked me like, well, what do you want me to do? I was like, oh, I didn't need you to do anything. I wanted you to know information. I could have sent an email, right? There's reasons that I did the call quickly and it took its place, but I think if I even started the meeting with hey guys, this is an informational, I just wanted to show you something for 15 minutes. That's different than let's spend an hour trying to come to a conclusion or trying to make a decision.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Setting everyone's objective is very important. Even if you're going to do Eisenhower Matrix or do these different tools, like setting that objective up front will make sure everyone's more successful. Because if you don't have a goal, people are just sitting there like, so what's the point? What's this mean to me?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's important. It's why I've gotten more and more in the practice. Unless the meeting is something we've already discussed with somebody ahead of time for a clear objective, I've been getting more and more in the practice of actually writing the objective in the meeting description when I set a meeting, so it's very clear what the meeting is for. Even if it's like reoccurring meetings in a project. Like I do a lot of project management, and like now I've been putting, even when I set like reoccurring check-in meetings, there's an objective, a broader objective that I set from the beginning for all of those check-in meetings. That's very clear, and then that gets refined when you actually create the agenda and you get closer, right? But like to your point, the purpose is a big part of that. If you don't have that clearly set before you jump into the meeting, it doesn't matter how many of these frameworks you use that Will and I are going to be talking about decision-making and communication, they're not going to work. You need to have that clear understanding, and everybody needs to be clear on that understanding coming into a meeting, like what they're coming into that meeting for, because if not, that's how things get derailed. It's how people's expectations don't get met in different meetings. Honestly, this is one of the basic things to start with, because we're talking about decision making but also communication. Part of this is just being unclear on what an objective of something is, whether it's a meeting or it's an activity that you're doing just digitally to make decisions or work together. Set those boundaries for what collaboration looks like and what the goal is when you do that, or else things will just become a space to chat and talk and honestly won't go anywhere. And that's how I ended up at some point in briefly in a space where I was in like 10 to 13 meetings a week at one point, and did not like that.
I will say like a confession here a little bit. You know, when I'm in a meeting, okay, that got weird. When I'm in a meeting,
I'm leaning in for the confession.
And I'm not paying attention, right? Okay, when I'm in a meeting and I'm not paying attention, I'll tell you, I disconnect because I do not realize there's a purpose for me to pay attention, right? Like if somebody's going on about something and it's not clear to me why it's relevant, I'll start doing something else. I have so many other things to do it is not worth my time sitting there twiddling my thumbs, literally smiling at the camera. Like, why? Why should I sit there, do nothing of relevance, when I could get something done? So, like, if you make that meeting more relevant to me, make it clear why I'm there, make it clear what my purpose is in the meeting, you're going to keep me on target. You're going to keep me from being distracted and doing other things and task switching, etc. Like, I hate to admit it, it's just true. I was doing it today. I've done it daily recently because I got too many things going on.
I'm doing it right now. No, I'm just joking. I'm not doing it right.
Well, you know, I do and I don't do it. My wife is or isn't texting me about the Phillies game. You know, it is what it is. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. No. So anyway, side note of why I've discovered I hate this so much. So we did strengths finders on our team, which normally I hate this type of stuff. And I still kind of like am skeptical. So often, we've talked about this with our wives about Enneagram. The thing I don't like about these things is like somebody fills it out and then all of a sudden you're like in the box as like, this is like your stuff that you are. But there was an interesting takeaway I had from this. Okay. I know, Will, that this is kind of, have you ever done strengths finders or like know what it is? Kind of
strengths. I know what they are. I don't think I've taken this one specifically.
Yeah.
Strength
so
finders,
you get like kind of questions. They do try to take a little bit more of a research approach,
strengths.
which is why I know a handful of people who don't dislike it as much. But basically, like, you're kind of looking at yourself in certain categories. I think it's like influencing. Yeah, here we go. Executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Real quick, let's just play a game, Will. Okay. Where do you think I scored the highest, and where do you think I scored the least?
And
we know.
Wow, were you done speaking? I'm sorry.
Actually, ironically, it wasn't relationship building. I got like none in strategic thinking, which I disagree with.
What?
A little bit. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's because I don't like 5-year plans, and all the questions seemed like that, and I think they're stupid, useless, and a false perception that we're God. So look, that might be why.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I scored
so
the
strategic thinking.
Relationship building was on the bottom too. It was not. It was not.
Okay.
I didn't score one thing in relationship building. That was like this was one of my top 5. These were top 5, by the way, not entire.
But I don't remember all of them. But I would assume like project management, like decision making was at the top.
Executing the purple.
Executing was at the top.
I got a lot of purple. I got a ton of purple. My number 1 was belief. I know that should become huge
not surprised at all.
To you. Okay?
Not surprised at all.
But let me see if I can pull up a picture real quick on my screen so I can see what they are. Okay. So I got 1 in influencing, which was hilarious because the rest of our leadership team did not get anything in influencing, which I thought was funny. And also terrifying. There's a handful of them here, Will, and I want to read these off. This is playing the game. How well does Will know Josh? And then I think we should have Will take this and see what happens. In influencing, there's a couple of them. There is activator, maximizer, command. So this is like types of influence, right? Okay, self-assurance, communication, significance, competition, and woo, which is the dumbest name for anything ever to exist, but it's like you kind of woo people over, you know what I mean?
I know somebody who's a wooer.
Yeah.
I'm a wooer.
Yeah, well, I've always known you to be a woo girl, so it's woo! Anyway, real quick, which one do you think I scored in that one?
Command. Influence command.
Yeah, that was my number 1. So anyway, what was an interesting takeaway for me is this is why I like this stuff so much, and it's so important to me, is because it literally kills me to be in a meeting where like nobody wants to make a decision about to do something. It hurts.
It's the worst.
Like it hurts down to the point that like we're trying to decide where to go to lunch a couple weeks ago, and Robin and Justin are debating about where to go, and I just gotta like walk down the middle and I go, cool, we're going here, and I like get in the car because it hurt me to have us playing rock paper scissors about where to go for lunch. Like this isn't that hard.
Let's just
make a decision. It's not that difficult. Anyway, so this was a fun little story of why this matters so much to me. So with that said, I don't think making decisions and prioritizing needs to be that hard. I think the number one, and maybe you might disagree with this, but or you might not, I have no idea. I think the number one mistake people make when it comes to trying to prioritize and make decisions is that they think if you just come into a meeting and talk about all the things enough, eventually a priority will show up. It's like in my opinion, it's like trying to find a groundhog without a groundhog hole. I don't know. That was a bad analogy. But it's like, if we talk about a groundhog enough, it'll show up. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you agree? Like, have you seen that a lot in meetings? It's like, we're going to try to talk about what's the biggest priority. And then most of the meeting is just everybody talking about about the things. You know what I mean? They're like discussing the things.
I find this most prevalent when leaders are involved, ironically. Right? Like, if I'm meeting with a peer to, like, discuss how we're going to do something or work on a project, like, I find it to be quite actionable, and I don't struggle with that. When you want to see if, like, when you're talking about a strategy or we need to do this, we talk about, like, a larger project, that's when I find this problem to happen, because, like, then there's so many more decision points to be made, right? And so
in a leader's defense, they usually have a larger scale perspective that they have to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
That, like,
absolutely.
because I've had the same thing, right? You're working with a coworker on some kind of try to get something done. It's a little bit clear what the path is forward most of the time, because you're actively trying to do something and get something done. You try to execute something, and when you look at things from either a larger project or strategy scale, it's a struggle sometimes because it's not always immediately clear what the starting point is. In some cases, I might argue. I don't know. There's a lot of factors, right, of what you're looking at sometimes.
Right. But that's I think part of that, it may actually be the complexity of the issue that plays into how this plays out in a conversation, right? Like, if I'm working with a peer, we're typically addressing a task. If I'm working with a leader, we're trying to set scope for a project, right? There's a whole different scale there. Like, if I'm working with just a peer, I don't think that there's as much of this negotiation, this back and forth. Like, typically we're told already, accomplish this thing. So now we have the guardrails, and it's like, oh, all right, John, you gonna do this part? Yeah. All right, so I'll do this part, and if I pull this in, we do that. Okay, cool, and boom, we're done. Like, it's not a lot of, like, negotiation. It's more execution. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm working with my boss on something and she's like, hey, we need to accomplish this, and this larger project is going to take this long, and there's these 10 components, and we blah, 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 blah. You know, how are you going to do step 3? It's like, well, okay, step 3, or, you know, big task 3 in the larger, like, if 1 and 2 go this way, then I think 3 needs to go this way. Well, I think 1 and 2 are going to go that way, so we really need to go that way. Okay, well, I was thinking 1 and 2, you know, like, suddenly you're negotiating a lot more because there's more on the table.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like I regularly would like more systematic decision making, because those conversations become he said, she said. You know, it's not necessarily between me and my boss, but it's just like, if a person makes one claim, it's not often that everybody brings rationale to the conversation. I was in a meeting today where there was not a disagreement, but one person said, well, we should try this, and the other person said, we should try that. And it's like, okay, we both just said, let's try walking. No, let's try running. Well, that's now we're stuck, right? If we just say that, there's nothing more. Why should we walk? Why should we run? And hey, where are we going in the first place? Maybe it's not about walking and running. Maybe we need to change something altogether. We don't know necessarily where we're going. And so that's where those systematic decisions need to come into play, and tools to help accomplish that. Goals, objectives can really drive that conversation along. Otherwise, you spend an hour and a half spinning your wheels trying to walk or run when you need a plane, you know, and you just need to fly there, right?
Will now works in transportation, in case anybody's curious. They've been starting real basic. They're a startup.
I'm the TSA.
So they're a startup transportation company, so right now they're just on foot, but they're getting to planes.
If anybody wants in, okay, I'm selling equity.
Yeah, it's going to be great. No, yeah, and I also think there's this other component, right, where you're trying to make decisions about what to do, whether it's like project-based or initiative-based. And I see a lot of different ways that this happens, but I think at large I can group them into kind of like 2 dysfunctional categories that systems thinking can help overcome. One is what I would call I mean, tyranny of the urgent is often how you talk about this, right? It's basically like whatever it is
Amen.
that day
Yes.
is now the priority. And so what you end up having is actually teams who do way too much context switching between too many different things at the same time, and you don't get very far with things. You don't get things done. The other side of it is what I call like decision paralysis, sort of, a little bit, where it's like they don't know how to prioritize. They have, like, I was in a meeting like this, I've referenced this a couple times on the podcast, where we were trying to make decisions about which tech projects to work on that year. It's the infamous tech prioritization project meeting, and there were like 13 projects on this list. And we asked
And
people,
they were all so small, right?
yes, and we asked people what should the priorities be, and the answer was, well, we don't know. Like, there was no clear picture of, like, they were frozen with, there's just too much to do. I don't know how to figure out what we should do versus what we shouldn't do. And what ends up happening in both of those situations is inadvertently everything ends up becoming the priority. Because if tyranny of the urgent is driving you, then everything's the priority, because whatever happens that day, that moment, that email, that immediate problem that we now have that we must solve today, or the entire corporation will explode, that's the one problem. What I call tyranny of indecision, if you will, I shall term that now, is that eventually, because we have to get things done, people just start being asked to do all the projects because we haven't been able to figure out which one should come first. And then you end up spending way too much time doing too many things and never getting anything done at the end of the day. And so that's why, like, decision-making tools need to come into place. So there's a lot of different decision tools that are out there. Will and I are not going to cover all of them, but we want to cover some favorites, some things that are specifically useful in different purposes. So the first one I want to talk about is normally called the Eisenhower Matrix. Okay, so I actually don't know the history of the Eisenhower Matrix. For all the project management experience I have zero remembrance of who actually created this. I'm
gonna guess Eisenhower.
Well, you would think that, but we do weird things in our world. You know, who knows who actually created this?
I'm going to Wikipedia. I'll backfill us shortly.
So, in general, the Eisenhower Matrix is a way to discuss and think about what should be the highest priority right now, right? So, I'm going to share my screen because Will and I actually want to show this. There's a lot of tools that will do this, but we talked about Miro probably way too much in this podcast, if we're being honest. Because I think Mordecai, the AI we created the one time, it was like the top 2 tools that we talked about were basically, or 3 were Canva, Miro, and Notion. Now, when it's good, okay? You know what? If you want me to talk about you more, Lucidchart, figure out how to make a better whiteboard. So, I like Miro, but one of the things I like about Miro is that it's a very much collaborative environment, and they offer a lot of templates for stuff like project management and things that I set up on my own all the time, but I use their templates a lot so I don't have to start from scratch, because I also do a lot of remote digital meetings with people. If I have an actual whiteboard, I would just draw this on an actual whiteboard and use it as well. But so if I go to their template and I just look up Eisenhower Matrix here real quick, I'll easily get one fairly quickly because it's a fairly popular concept as far as going. So right here, I got an Eisenhower Matrix. Sometimes it's called priority matrix, if you will. There's like alternative versions called like risk matrices, which are a little bit different. But I'm gonna click use this template because I already know what the template is. Okay, so the idea behind behind an Eisenhower Matrix, sometimes it's actually like a grid. They do blocks in Miro for it, but sometimes it's just like a line down the middle and a line over here. But it's basically like urgent and important are the ideas, right? Yeah. So you have one quadrant that is it's urgent and important. You have a quadrant, but it's urgent but less important. You have a quadrant that's less urgent but important, and then neither urgent nor important. And the idea of an Eisenhower Matrix is you would look at this, you'd have post-it notes, you take your projects or initiatives that you're looking at, and you'd rate them against each other on this board. Right? Now, if you're doing it yourself, you just do it yourself. But where I think this is most effective is if you actually have a team of people in a meeting, they can each have different colored post-it notes for each of the projects, right? Or they can write their names on them, and they go up and they put them on the board. You see where everybody put them, and then you have discussions about basically trying to come to consensus about doing this. Now, the way Miro does this is you have these post-it notes, and then they have dots that you can copy to vote on. So you basically place it on the board, then you take some time, have everybody use their colored dot to vote on if they agree with where it's at or where it should be, and then you kind of reorient it. You might have to do this through a couple phases in a meeting. This isn't going to literally be use the Eisenhower Matrix. Everybody puts it up. You discuss it for 15 minutes. Cool, we've agreed. If you only have like 3 projects, sure. If you've got 10 that you're trying to figure out how to prioritize, or tasks or problems you're trying to figure out how to prioritize, because it doesn't just have to be projects, you're not necessarily going to get there very, very quickly. So you might need a couple iterations of this in a meeting to get to a point where you all agree on where everything should be. The idea then is like urgent and important is something you do right away. Okay, it's super urgent, it's super important, you do that first. If it's less urgent but important, you don't have to do it right away, so schedule it as something, right? Schedule it as a project, schedule it later for work, ask it for it. If it's urgent but less important, you could delegate that, is their idea. And then if it's neither urgent nor important, why are you even talking about it right now? Don't do this. Like, that's basically the idea.
And that quadrant is why you struggle with this, right?
Yes. So here's my thing. The Eisenhower Matrix is a very popular version of this matrix, and I do think it's helpful, especially if you don't have. But here's my criticism of the Eisenhower Matrix. What is the difference between urgent and important? I don't actually know. I've looked this up a bunch. I have a lot of experience now in project management at this point. If it's urgent, isn't it important? Like, isn't that the vibe? You know what I mean?
How do you separate something that's
How do you separate them? Now, what I think the Eisenhower Matrix really means when it says important is it's talking about like impact, right? How much impact would it have? Because something can be urgent and not impactful, as like at least impact is as wide as you're thinking of, like on a product or on a team or on a school or whatever it is, on a course, whatever that may be, right? That might not be. So this is helpful if you look at this and this makes sense to you. This is the only reason I share this, because some people don't like my other matrix either, because it makes less sense to them. I think they're wrong, but you can look at the Eisenhower Matrix. So that's one of them. The other matrix, though, that I think is helpful, that is very similar to the Eisenhower Matrix, and for the longest time I actually didn't know what the name of it was, because I just got it through Agile project management training and experience, but it's actually called impact versus effort. So if I do impact versus effort, I think I should get a matrix here. Here we go. Okay, so impact / effort matrix. So let's use this template. Now, you'll see in a second why people get these confused with each other, because they are very similar in format. I have 4 blocks. I've got this stuff, but here's the difference, right? So high, here's my arrows on this one. So high is high impact. So impact meaning this is going to make a big difference. It could really change something in the area you're in. Maybe it's a problem that's impacting things a lot, right? You can use these types of matrices to prioritize problems that you address. So it might be a problem that has a big impact if we would fix that, right? Or whatever it would be. But then the other matrix part of this that they change is high or low effort, which I really like, because at the end of the day, I actually think prioritization is not just about how urgent and important it is. It's about, is this going to make a difference? And how hard is this stupid thing going to be? Like, is this going to be difficult for our team, right? So if I'm looking at this, right, like let's say, I don't know, Will, do we have any problems off the top of our head or projects that we could reveal on the podcast? I don't know that, thinking about, or an idea here real quick,
I just, how to make Tanks 101 a reality. Like, I just don't know.
I guess, I don't know. Okay, let me give a real world example, right? So like, at one point we wanted to automate our course importing process.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So now some of the examples,
that's pretty generic. That works for a lot of folks.
Some of the things I'm going to use here are not necessarily reality of what it was for us in the moment. But let's say if I'm a team, right? Let's say I've never done this before. Okay, we've never automated this. We've maybe done some automations, but we've never done this process, right? We've never tried to automate something into the LMS that we have our courses going into. Maybe we will automate it into another tool, hypothetically Airtable. Like we don't know the process yet. Our developer who would do this has not built it yet, right? So I would say, okay, this is going to be probably on the higher effort side, right? Okay. Because it's something we actually, in my
never done it before.
Yeah, in my custom version, I actually don't put high effort. I put we don't know. Like we just don't know how hard it's going to be. Because I consider those things the same thing. If you don't know how hard it's going to be, it's hard right now. You have no idea. This could be, you would rather be pleasantly surprised at the end of the day.
Is the other side still low effort, or it is, I know exactly how hard it is, and it's
I think
not
I
very hard
still
at all.
have it
Like,
as low effort because everything is effort. But like,
yeah.
so like I would put this probably higher up in the high effort part, right? Okay, but let's say like my team's example, we import content into courses, probably easily between 200 to 300 courses a session. Semester, right? So like that process at the time was taking us anywhere between like 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, times that by 200 to 300 courses, right? That was a lot of time my team was using on that situation, right? So the way we rated this would have been, okay, high impact. Okay, that's a big deal, right? We want to do that, but we put it kind of at this high effort spot, right? So now, if I compare that against something else, right? I'm just going to use practical examples.
And let's just even say if you were only doing 5 courses a session, okay, way different effort requirement than the quantity you were dealing with. So it's important to consider that when it comes to automation. Like sometimes I do things where I'm like, oh, I could automate this, but I also am only doing 2 of them at one time. It's like, is it really worth automating it if I just have to do 1 real quick or 2 real quick? Like,
yeah,
I would say maybe it is for long-term effect, but nonetheless.
So this is another real life example. We were actually considering both of these things at the same time, so now I'm starting to remember some more things. So this is actually helpful.
It's coming back to you.
We also figured out we could automate, so we have a status on our courses in our database, whether it's ready or not for the instructor to use, right? So like we were looking at this, we were going, okay, we could set this up. We already know how to automate this because we've automated other things, other places for this. It's only one field that we'd be changing with the automation. It's based off of a trigger that we know how to work with. So it was pretty low effort, right? Impact was going to be super high because that ready status automated our emails already to our faculty that the courses were ready. And so right now we were having to manually send those until that ready status was set up. And that was taking a lot of work. It was also high impact because nobody on my team back then seemed to be able to remember to manually change the status of the course. And so I never knew when it was ready. And so we're wasting tons of time talking back and forth on whether they were ready. So it was high impact, low effort. Okay. So to explain how this matrix works, high impact, low effort is due now. And there's a reason for this. While it might not be much effort, and some people might say, well, we need to start the harder thing first. My answer would be no, wrong. If it can be done first, do the thing that's easier. It's a win. It's done. It's out of the way. You don't have to deal with it. Okay. Get that done right away because it's something you can just start getting done. You can deliver things. I like 37 Signals when they talk about this idea of like, you should be addicted to delivering things. Get things done. Okay. So like,
yes.
So do it now. Do it next means, okay, if it's high effort, high impact, this is probably like a project. So this should be when we're done with the easy, quick wins that are actually impactful, we do that, right? The other part of this matrix then is just like, let's say it's low impact, low effort. Do it if there is time, okay? Like if you can get that done, sweet. It doesn't impact a lot of things. Get that done. It's kind of one of those things I call like back burner tasks. If you got some extra space,
right?
Get this done, right? If it's high effort and low impact, don't waste your freaking time on it. I don't care if you think it's a cool idea. Don't do it right now. Just don't bother, okay?
Put it in the idea list and move on.
Yes. So put it in the
delete
idea list and move
delete
on.
the idea.
Exactly. So if you do this, you can see if you would do this for a lot of projects, what I would do, and I've done this with teams that I've both been on and I've been consulting with, where like you get everybody to put the projects up on the board, right? You talk about if you agree, because you compare them against each other, because comparing against each other also affects this. Because if I see this and I see this next to each other, I might look and go, you know what? This is a little bit more impactful. If this is high effort, this is definitely like super low effort. But if like I see this over here and I'm like, I look at this, I'm like, you know what? That's harder than that thing. Okay, so it's actually more effort. But you know what? It really is nothing compared to that thing. So I'm just gonna move that off the board. Like it's not even on my board. So I do that, and by the end of the meeting, if you follow this format, you've got your what I start first, your highest priority, what I start next, my next priority, projects. Maybe you start working on planning those projects out now while you're doing the quick wins. You've got your backlog of things you don't need to deal with right now, but could be easy if you run out of stuff to do, which totally happens in life. And then you have your things that you're like, sorry, boss, we're not doing those things. And here's why. Like this
always have the why.
Yeah, you need the why. So I don't know. Like, Will, have you actually used this in any place? Like this matrix idea? I know you've seen some of these things, but
I'd like to. There's days where I think that I need this, but no, I haven't used this matrix. But even last week, I was working on priorities with my boss, and like we actually probably identified 3 to 5 things, and 2 of them were those do it nows. It's like, look how easy that is. Just implement that, right? Like it's going to make it better for our learners. It's going to make it easier for us. You need 15 minutes to do it. It's been at the bottom of your list because it seems like nothing, but like you said, get that win on the table because it's going to reduce effort other places. And frankly, for me, when it comes to prioritization and having a long list of priorities, that's cognitive load, right?
Yeah.
The more things that are on my project list that I haven't done, the longer it's taking me to get them done, the less motivated I am to do them. Like getting those wins is a significant part of the team element of decision making and motivation theory, like keeping people engaged, giving them that little dopamine hit, whatever it takes to like move things forwards. It's important to get those do it nows. It's not a bad thing to consider
100%.
those as priorities.
It also lessens the things you have to do. Like
Right.
so many people
Your list
end up
gets smaller.
focusing on the big things, right? Like if you focus on the big thing first, this is why I tell people to find quick wins if you can. Obviously there's like in projects there's cadence too, there's dependencies and things that need to come first before other things, right? Or there's higher priority things that need to come first. I'm not saying that, but like what ends up happening when you focus on all your high effort, high impact things is you get bogged down on these projects that slowly, these things, because you keep adding more to them and more and more
Yep.
and more, eventually these all just start moving up on the effort side. And they start to become more impactful to the point that now you got this huge backlog of load of things to get done that were important, but you put them off because they were smaller. So like it's a thing. So that's a matrix on there. I probably went longer than I really needed to on both of these things, but I think they're helpful. Miro,
That's all right.
Miro has templates for both of these, as we just showed, which is why I really love Miro. So like if you don't want to try to set this up on your own, and you're especially trying to do this digitally, I have yet to find a whiteboard tool that does this better than Miro does.
Yeah.
I think Miro does a really solid job of setting up templates for you to be able to access stuff. And they've even added, this is not a highlight of this episode, but they've even added like AI features where there's like little assistants in here that will like help you prioritize and like automate some of how you find your priorities. Like it'll actually look at the board and tell you what is the thing you should start with based on the matrix that you used. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's one of my ideas. The next one on our list is one of mine as well, but why don't you tell me that one?
Yeah, no, we did spend a lot of time with that one, so it's we'll try and be a little tighter with these latter two, but what we wanted to do with the 3 examples to give today was emphasize like this Eisenhower Matrix or Josh's Impact Effort Matrix is about decision making. Now, some of the other things that go into this stuff is like systems thinking, problem solving. Like it's sometimes we have to make a decision, but sometimes we need to, and that might be prioritizing, that might be planning, that might be goal setting, whatever it is. Systems thinking and problem solving is not always about like making a decision. So you might think problem solving, oh, I'm going to make a decision. Not necessarily. If you have a problem, sometimes a significant part of a problem is identifying why or what or the intricacies of the problem. You're not necessarily going to make a decision. How do we address the problem? Sometimes, that's where problem solving does go. But the retrospective as a tool, right? Taking a time after a project or after a problem to do a retrospective to review what happened is significant in this kind of process. The other example, I'm just kind of putting them all out there just in case we see how much time we do and don't spend on them. But, if we're talking just communication and feedback, there's this very popular model called the SBI model. That's Situation, Behavior, Impact. We use that at my day job. But I think it's one of those models that I think helps to take apart maybe sometimes the process of communication being very personal and maybe very feelings focused or opinions focused, and break it down into something that we can objectively look at different boxes, right? So in a SBI model situation, somebody forgets to set the course statuses on 10 courses, right? Mm-hmm. The situation is they forgot to set. The situation is setting the core statuses. The behavior is they forgot something. The impact is 10 faculty could not begin their courses or cannot take their step in the design process, right? So that's the SBI. Now, if we brought that back to communication purpose, it's now going to the person who failed to meet their objective, right? And saying, hey, the situation was, your behavior was, this is the impact, no judgment. What do we need to work on to identify how we can improve it next time? Did we need to change the situation? Is it the issue with core statuses? Not typically. That doesn't sound like a big problem. Is it the behavior? You forgot. Why did you forget? Did you not have a calendar reminder? Did you forget to go into your project management software that day? Were you having a bad day? Did you call out sick? What is the behavior? We don't know what happened around forgetting. And then the impact, that's not something we can change, but if we understand the behavior and its relationship to the impact, we might be able to mediate that impact in future cases. So if it was the behavior, I got sick, that's why I forgot, we move on. They got sick. We have to account for what happened. We see it. But if there's some sort of other behavior like, oh, I don't put it in my calendar. Why don't you put it in your calendar? This is one of your responsibilities that happens every 6 weeks. It should be in your calendar, right? That's a behavior we can begin to address. It doesn't have to be a personal issue, whatever. But these are things like doing a retrospective. There's different tools like on tools.co, probably even in Miro, where you can systematically look back on a project that happened and try to assess what happened in it. Same thing with communication feedback. We can use this SBI model as a tool to help us work through something that might be sticky. It is not always fun to tell somebody they messed up or why they messed up.
Incorrect.
If you're Josh, who likes to command,
I scored lower in relationship building. Remember that?
I wonder if I'd be like top relationship in like 1 or 2 and everything.
I mean, probably that was why we complimented ourselves so well over the last couple of years working on some of these projects. Although sometimes if they hit you the wrong way, all of Will's relationship building just like burns. I think if there was another section that was called bridge burning, it would just be like that would be like your secret skill. It's like Will
and
is
we're
like,
done here.
Will is like the Hulk. He's good until you do something that he believes is fully righteously horrible. Like, and then
you are my best friend until I want to martyr you.
Yep. That's basically It's a good ride until the murder. It's.
Listeners, that's not been Josh, but we have had
not
some
yet.
people.
Give it some time.
I think there's definitely models in Miro for retrospectives. There's models for even probably SBI. Those are all on Untools. Take a look at these things and consider how they can work. Right? If you take 15 minutes to do an Eisenhower Matrix, or an hour to do an Eisenhower Matrix or the impact effort, you're going to come out with more clarity as a team, as an individual, on what needs to be accomplished. If you go through a retro, you as a team are going to be able to understand what happened, good or bad, in a project. If you go through SBI, it's typically used for one-on-one communication. Not saying you couldn't even use SBI as a retro tool, right? You could use SBI, situation, behavior, impact, to review how a project went down.
I would agree.
So that's not just an interpersonal tool. It's a feedback tool, and feedback can be person to person, or feedback can be on a project, on a process, on a system. So these are all complementary. Run them through Miro, run them through whatever, or just take some time, read up on them, and apply them.
Yeah, I was going to share my screen here real quick, Will. There are a couple retrospective things inside Miro. Actually, I want to look and see if there's an SBI one. We forgot to look ahead of time, but I agree. I think the SBI one could be used broadly, though I think it works better on the one-on-one case of a retrospective than the example I'm going to show now. There is another retrospective model that I like to use for teams that's more agile vibes. It's from, I actually don't know who originally created it, but it's called like the L's retrospective, right? So they have the template in here in Miro. So if I click on using this template, and this is one that I think really shows Miro's template skills really well. because it adds in some stuff that like you have to. I mean, you could find as you're looking into Miro, right? But it gives like a description of how this works. I love that Miro has now added these little post-it note stacks that you can now add into projects, so people can just kind of pull out post-it notes on there, kind of like real life. But the idea is a team would go through this, right? So we're working through our team with this on retrospectives, where you take some time, the team kind of brainstorms on their own, individually, what did the team like about the project so far? What went well, right? What worked well, right? They put that down, they talk about it. What did the team learn, right? What is a takeaway, something that you learned from this project? It can be good. It could be like, I learned that Will is a good relational person, and should be the one to write the emails. Like that might be something you learned. What did the team lack? Like, I'm not retrospecting a real project at all, maybe, but, what did the team lack? Clear direction from a project manager that was not in harness tech. No
idea.
Sorry. Okay, so,
yep.
Lack, right, you're missing. What did the team long for? So this is the idea of like, what would be something you wish you guys had done, right? And then you take all that information and you start to talk about, now they talk about sprint because it's very agile, but like, what are the next action items? So it wouldn't be that there's an action item from each thing. It would basically be overall, what are like 1 to 2 action items out of all of this discussion that could be done very clearly for next meeting or next project, right? And then what's super cool about the Agile Coach in Miro is they add a little sidekick there. We can suggest next steps. I haven't actually tested that yet, but I think it's a cool feature. So anyway, that's a cool model you could use. And then it gets to one of the things I think is important no matter any of these meetings. Remember, we talked about, think of this as the Josh and Will meeting sandwich model, okay? Okay? Beginning, the nice solid sourdough bread, if you will, because I really like sourdough bread. Or a good pumpernickel, if you will. You get that going in the beginning. What is that? That's the objective, the clear thing, the reason for the meeting. The nice meat and cheese, and maybe if you like some salad, some lettuce in the middle with some tomato, maybe a little bit of.
I'm really glad we ate before this.
A little bit of mustard, whatever it may be, right in the middle of that nice sandwich, right? That's the framework you're going to use for decision making or communication or evaluation, right? That's going to be the structure of your meeting. And then the other sourdough bread on the other side, or I don't know, pumpernickel, if you will, because this isn't an open-faced sandwich, We're not in high school.
Gosh.
At our lunchroom, eating the leftover sandwiches from the day before. This is a real sandwich, a sandwich for champions, for kings, if you will. This bread on the other side, this is clear action items with clear owners of the action items, okay? End the meeting with clear. Every meeting has an action item afterwards, unless it's just a meeting to say, great job, we're done, we all quit. There's a clear, and even then, there's a clear action item. We all quit. Okay? There's always something coming out of the meeting you're gonna do, right? And so that's that other side, right? You clear action item, clear that, and then if you really want to, add the little plastic sword in the sandwich, if you will, you send a nice follow-up email with the action items clearly laid out, and you store it somewhere in a repository for when inevitably someone doesn't read it. Okay, those are the Josh and Will tips to running a decent meeting, getting some of that stuff out of there. So Miro is a great way to create that system. And real quick, I am going to look here real quick for us. Will, SBI, let's see if we got something.
Oh, there's got to be something.
Maybe. What did it stand for again? It was
situation, behavior, impact.
Behavioral persona, impact mapping. They might not have it, weirdly enough.
Wow.
It would be that hard to create here, probably.
It might be like an element on one of those boards. It could be something that they're doing inside of it.
Side note, they have a bullseye? What the heck is a bullseye? I just love Miro templates. I could get lost in Miro templates for a while. It's like there's so many things that people have created in Miro.
All right, well, Josh is going to go to Miro. I'll finish up the... No, I'm joking.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, anyway, sorry. I'm done now. I'm finished. On that note, that is some system decision-making, communication, call to action here is just, do it. Try some of these tools. Remember the sandwich, if you will. Anyway, just a reminder again, you can find us, or can't, depending on what mood we're in that moment, on the socials. Just find us at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. You can email us at inbox at hightechpod.us if you'd like to get a hold of us, and you can check out our website, hightechpod.us as well. All right, folks, this is a wrap on another week. Empowering minds.
Embracing tech. Cheers.
Cheers.
Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future's calling.